Hello everybody and welcome to our Friday afternoon stream. Today we're going to focus on gerberas. We have large gerberas and mini gerberas. But before I start that, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name is Debbie, and for those of you who haven't met me before, I tend to be in front of the camera. My colleague Laura, who you'll hear but you won't see, is behind the camera.
Hi there.
There you go. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. I hope we're going to give you a bit of inspiration, a bit of bright, colourful flower today. So, as I say, we're going to focus on gerbera. Now, we're often asked what the difference between small gerberas and large gerberas are. So this is your large gerbera, and this is your mini gerbera. If I can get it untangled. So you can see there is quite a substantial difference. And it's like everything in life, it's horses for courses. Sometimes the larger headed variety of gerbera suits an arrangement more so than a smaller one. If you want to create impact, your large gerberas are a really good way to go. If it's for a wedding, for a bouquet, and you still want that daisy kind of appearance, but you want a smaller version, then possibly the mini gerbera or Germini is the best way to go. So yeah, just to give you an indication, that's kind of your colour. That's kind of your size difference, so it's quite substantial really. Okay, so I will introduce you to the varieties in a moment, but before I do that, I'm just going to show you how they come when they arrive. This is what's termed as secure packed. I'm just going to pop this one back in, if you'll play the game. There you go. So they arrive in the box. Now the large gerberas are available in 25s or 50s, and 25s is a half box, so you can see what I mean by that. And the mini gerberas or Germinis come in multiples of either 30 or 60. So again, 30 is your half box, 60 is your full box. The mini gerberas do tend to be slightly less expensive than the large. I guess that is determined by the size to a certain extent. But whether it be a mini gerbera or a large gerbera, this is how they arrive when they're secure packed. So inside the box, you'll find they have a racking system. I'll just pull the staples away from the side of the outer box. And usually they have a nice little foam support as well, just to stop the stems from launching about in the main box. Now if you gently lift the inside racking out, support the gerberas, just do away with that box. You can see from the back view that they come in a nice racking system. Now the best way to condition those is to actually lay that racking system on the bench, cut all of the stems at an angle, like so, making sure you go through the whole of the 25 stems, then support that box on top of a deep bucket so all the stems are drinking in that upright position. Then when they're fully hydrated and turgid, they will theoretically be in that nice upright point, which is then going to make them very easy to wire. If you place them into a vase when they're dry and you just cut them like that, that's how, when they're fully rehydrated and being conditioned, that's how they will stay. Now believe me from experience, it's really difficult to wire a gerbera that's head is on the kink. So if they've drunk and they're in that upright position, it's much easier to wire them.
Is the reason because they've got such a heavy head?
Yeah, it is, and it's because they're transported so dry. The gerberas are actually kept in dry form for some time. They might well have been out of water for 3-4 days, might even be up to a week when they arrive with you. So because they are very dry and very dehydrated, and they've been laid in that position for so long, that's how they've ended up. So you just kind of want to alleviate that a bit really. I mean, if you buy gerberas and they don't come in a racking system, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but occasionally that happens, what I would suggest you do possibly is get a kitchen cooling rack that you'd cool your sponges or your cakes or your goodies on out of the kitchen. Support that over the top of a really deep bucket, and then again cut the stems at an angle. If you imagine that my hand is the cooling rack, suspend the gerberas through the cooling rack, so again they're just drinking in that position.
Perfect.
Okie doke. So that's how they arrive. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to some of our mini gerberas here, or Germinis. We've got a bit of a glorious colour mix here today. So we'll start from this end. The cerise one is called Whisper, a lovely dark centre to that. This one is, ooh, I can get that out. This one is Hilary, lovely girl Hilary. This one's actually really lovely because it's got what I call a furry centre. This one's not quite so furry. Probably need to get out more really, don't I?
You do indeed, Debs. It's okay.
This yellow one is Sailor, and I know my colleague is very fond of Sailor, so she tends to order that one in because again that's got a nice black furry middle. Next we have this rather interesting two-tone one. This one's called Alina. Now it's got a cream outer petal, and then it's got a base petal of pink, so that would work really well if you've got a cream and pink wedding going on. This one is called Navy. Now, under no circumstances would you actually describe this colour as navy, but that's what it's called. It's more of a purple. It's actually not your Cadbury's chocolate purple, it's more of your sort of aubergine kind of, yeah, deep, yeah, it's a lovely colour though, and again, nice black middle. And last but by no means least, we have the coral one that's called Cookies and Cream. We often get asked for flowers that would mix with a coral coloration or a coral colour palette, so putting that with Miss Piggy, Lady Margaret, some of the coral hypericum, and perhaps some Barbados spray roses possibly. You've got that lovely coral colour palette going on there. So Cookies and Cream, good one to remember. So there are minis. So to wire, people often say to us that they're a little bit, I wouldn't say afraid exactly, but a bit reluctant to wire the gerberas, and they don't have a huge amount of success with them. Well, I have to say I don't think that that's such an issue with wiring gerberas, because you can just semi-externally wire them. So just pop the wire into the head, and you'll feel, if you put your thumb over the end of the flower, you'll actually feel if it's going through too far. You can feel when it hits home. Then support the head, whoops, and basically twist that wire all the way down the stem. So that's for the benefit of those of you who are right-handed. For those of you who are left-handed, same principle. If I can do it, it's me being ambidextrous here. I'll have to do it that way.
So it is quite a simple technique. When would you
Very
think
simple.
about wiring, say for an event, if you had an event on Saturday, when would you consider wiring your gerberas?
I have to confess, I tend to wire them just as I'm about to put something together. But there is absolutely no reason why you can't wire them up a couple of days in advance. The only thing you do have to be a little bit careful about is making sure that they're kept in a good environment. Because you are literally piercing the flower with the head of the wire, potentially you can get bugs going into the flower there. So just make sure that it's a nice airy environment and it's not too damp, too wet, because you don't want to get botrytis starting to form. So now I've shown you how to condition the gerberas, how they arrive when they're delivered to you. I'm going to actually do an arrangement with a few of them now, just to give you an idea of what can be achieved. They kind of lend themselves to almost having an arrangement made of just them only, with foliage, because there's quite an impacting kind of bloom. We do use them quite often in wedding work, the mini ones especially, amongst other flowers, but unless you're using them as a focal flower and you're using the large gerberas, I think they work quite well just on their own. So when you create...
So the slightly larger one, sorry to interrupt, Debs, would you maybe use as like a pedestal, kind of like as your focal flower?
They'd work beautifully as a focal flower for your pedestal because they're so vibrant and so in your face. So they naturally work as that focal dominant flower.
And as your pedestals, do they work quite nicely in Oasis? Are
They they're not bad in Oasis. Much better than say hydrangeas or something, or I'm trying to think of something, a campanula. They would work much nicer in Oasis. Much happier, put it that way. Especially once they've been conditioned for a good sort of 12 hours.
And would you just use that wiring technique that you used earlier to kind of manipulate from where you put them into the pedestal?
Yeah, that's a good point actually. I didn't show that earlier on. You can, once you have wired them, you have the ability to actually kink the heads in the position that you want them to be in. Did you catch that all right?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
So it sounds a little bit cruel, but actually it's not detrimental to the flower at all. But it does, if you've got them going into a pedestal, you can get that lovely curve and the head showing in the correct direction, rather than if you keep it like that, you don't get the beauty of the bloom.
Yeah, you're just in the edge really, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they work really well for pedestal work, I have to say. Yeah, good impact. Right, so I'm going to create almost a little mini topiary tree, but a topiary tree with a difference. So my ingredients today are the Rhapis palm. This is quite interesting, this palm, because you can, it's almost like a hand shape, but you can, if you want to, cut the ends. So if you want to make it a slightly different shape, you can literally just cut it. So already you've got an interestingly different kind of shape and impact. That looks a little bit more oriental than that possibly does. Now you've cut the stems at an angle. So yeah, that's Rhapis palm.
When you cut the leaves, is it detrimental to the leaves? Will they blacken at all?
Eventually they will, but for the purpose of, I mean, I don't know if you can see this. This is how they actually come in. This is how they arrive. The reason why they're cut is because the long points tend to get very tatty, get very bruised, very damaged. They don't look good. So they'll actually arrive with you in this form, having already been cut from the suppliers in Holland. I don't know if you can see very, very carefully. It hasn't gone bruised on the edge, but it's gone very dry. So it doesn't go black, it just dries out, just as though it's not been in water for a while. So, okay. So having shown you that, that's my Rhapis palm. I'm also going to use some Pistache. Really underused foliage in my opinion, really cost effective and fills in quite nicely as well. And our trusty old Beargrass. Okay, right, so off we go. I'm using just 2 varieties of large gerbera here. I'm using this absolutely scrummy coral one, and that one's called Scala. It's a really vibrant coral.
You'd say it's more of like a pinky coral.
Yeah, it's definitely not on the orange tones. It's definitely going more towards the reddy pinks than it is the orange and yellow sort of colour palette. But yeah, Scala, that's a lovely one. And then this one, which although it's described on our website as cream, it's called Estate. Although it's described as cream, I would actually say it's got a real hint of peach in the centre, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you're working, say for example, I'm just going to remove those. You can occasionally get a little bruised petal, so I tend to, I'll show you on this one. So literally just tuck your finger under and just pull that petal out. It's just the same as almost like with a guard petal with a rose, and you can see you've pulled it out. Literally, along with it has come.
It's very.
Yeah. So just remove those. Yeah, so if you were using something like, for example, peach avalanche roses in a wedding, that would work really, really well on a colour balance with that. So
you've wired them all already?
Oh, sorry, yep, already wired.
Okay.
Oh, that was the point. I was going to say, if you're not confident to use just a wire, the wires I've used today are a 71 by 260, I think, or 180, 260 possibly. Yeah, 260. So 0.71mm by 260. If you're not confident to do that, we do sell a really whizzy contraption called a Gerbera wire on our website. which is like a spring. You slide that up the stem, hook it into the bottom, then hold onto the hooky bit and then pull the spring down, and that holds it in position. So that's kind of like another alternative. I'm a bit old school, so I tend to use just the wires.
Still get some like getting used to, I think. So it's slightly harder to work, but then it's easy once you know how, if you know what I mean.
That's exactly the same with most things, I guess, in life, really. So yeah. So just putting 4 of these gerberas together, and I'm almost holding them as though they were hand tied, and I'm just going to bind that with some natural twine.
So whilst Debs is doing this, if anyone has any questions or anything about the demonstration today, make sure you comment below. We'd love to hear who's joined us today and also what the weather's like. It's a bit dreary here, not very nice the last few days, if I'm honest. Definitely not summer. And if anyone has any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Has anyone worked with gerberas before?
Yeah, any tips and hints that you want to share with us,
absolutely.
We're happy to take it on board the other way as well, rather than us always suggesting what you should do. Oh, please give us tips and hints as well. Every day is a school day and we're never too old to learn.
Absolutely.
So what I've done here, I don't know if you can see, I've just bound, can you see that okay? Yeah. So I've bound the twine, and then I'm just going to make a little decorative tie with a little tiny bow, just so that it looks a little bit neater than just tying it, really.
Looks like you've done it on purpose, Debs.
Exactly. Rather than
have to use any other materials to hide the mechanics.
Exactly. So rather than a happy accident. Just make sure that my stems are all level, and then because you've got the benefit of having the wires there, you can actually tweak the heads to where you want them. I'm just cutting the gerberas to the length that I want. Now, so as they don't move, I'm just going to grab some pot tape. Sorry, I was too efficient there and I've cleared my bench.
Just my purpose, Debs, of course.
Yeah, I'm not as tidy as I should be. So I'm just binding the stems. Now the reason why I'm doing that is just to actually keep them together. Then you'll find when you pop them into the oasis, they actually don't separate and they stay quite happily in that position. Then I'm going to take my Rhapis palm and place that all the way around the outside of the arrangement. I'm going to cut some of those off short. They're a bit tough, those stems. They're putting up a fight.
How many stems do you normally get in a Rhapis bunch?
10.
10, perfect.
Pretty much the same with most foliage, to be honest, except for weighted bunches. The weighted bunches are, as the name suggests, really done on a weighted basis.
If you wanted to do a similar effect, is there any other types of foliage that you would use to create this?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Fatsia leaves or Aurelia leaves, they would work really well. Now that, you can see, is far too big for that arrangement. So as I showed you earlier, I'm just literally going to give them a haircut. Now, might beg the question why nobody's ever asked me to cut their hair.
Yeah, after watching this, Debs, I don't think I'm going to ask.
No.
If I'm perfectly honest.
I have been known in the past to cut my own fringe with quite disastrous effects. So I'm going to stick to the flowers and the foliage. Can't go wrong there. So just literally cutting those little pieces off at an angle, which, as I said earlier, not only does it give you a smaller leaf really, it also gives you a slightly different shape and just makes it look a little bit more continental, I feel.
Absolutely. For this style of arrangement, where would you place it? Is it more of a corporate style centerpiece?
Or if you've got a ball or something like that, something not quite so bridally maybe, it would work really well for a summer ball.
I suppose we've got proms coming up, haven't we? So perfect for that.
Good point, yeah, proms. And also what you can do is you can insert in the centre little sparkly diamantes or bugs. I've known people to put little butterflies in the centre, ladybirds in the centre. So if you've got a ladybird ball or a ladybug ball as they call it, then yeah, you could put little bugs in to denote that. Yeah, I have even known people to put dolly mixtures in the centre for a children's party. So obviously not a great idea, as you don't want children to eat them, but yeah, there's so many things you can do with gerberas. They're so versatile. And yet people do seem slightly reluctant to use them. Slightly afraid, I think.
Also, I don't know, it's almost like chrysanthemums, for instance. People always associate them with more of a funereal look as such. But there's so many beautiful different types available on the market. And they're almost forgotten about, always similar to carnations. So I think it's, I don't know, it might be the look of them, or they've got an association and they're not.
I think it's sometimes a confidence thing as well. If you're confident in what you're making, then it shows, and you can use the flower well. I mean, chrysanthemums, you're absolutely right. Some of the chrysanthemum blooms, the frilly ones that are available now, are amazing, and the erythrizo is gorgeous. So yeah, I'm just going to add some pistache. As I say, I think this is quite an underrated foliage myself. It lasts really well, and it's really cost effective as well. It does have an interesting fragrance though. It smells quite woody, almost nutty and woody. So I'm not sure that necessarily that's one of its selling points, but
But I suppose if you're having like a rustic or kind of cottage garden, the scent would lend itself well to the kind of style of the event.
absolutely. I mean, it's not an offensive fragrance. It's just very, yeah, almost like you're walking through a forest, really. So
We'll add that though.
yeah, as I say, it's not an unpleasant fragrance. So all I'm doing really is just using it to cover the oasis that's left exposed.
With the pistache, how long would you condition it for?
Same as you would with any other foliage or flower really. Ideally overnight, and then you're ready to work with it the following day. But it does last in water incredibly well. It's one of the longer lasting foliage. Just cut one more little piece off. Got another little gap here. There we go. So you can see what I've done there. I've basically just covered the entire piece of oasis, so you can't actually see any of the oasis left. And then just really quickly and simply, I know it seems really awful to cut them down so short, just popping in my last few gerberas just to finish the base. Whoops, missed the oasis there. Try that again, just to finish the base of the arrangement. Now when you've wired the gerbera, what you'll find is occasionally your wire doesn't quite finish where your stem does. So I tend to rewind that around the stem, so you've still got that stem piece to go in first before it hits the wire. Otherwise your wire and your stems are competing for oasis space. So again, you see what I mean? If you try and push that in, sometimes the wire will just kink like that. So by adding, well, by winding it back around the stem, just gives the actual stem free range to go into the oasis. And again, you can just adjust them to where you want them.
So if you were to use Germinis for this style of arrangement, would you have to use slightly more Germinis to fill the area?
It very much depends really on whether you condense down the size of the arrangement. If you do like a smaller version of the arrangement, then no, you probably wouldn't need to. Excuse me, sorry, hiccup. You wouldn't need to. If you're going to keep to this size arrangement, then yeah, you'd need to add more, definitely. And then just to finish off, finally, just to give it that added contemporary feel. If I can get that in. Just going to cage the gerberas, and by caging basically this means encompassing the gerbera with a loop of beargrass. So nothing too.
Is beargrass probably the best one to use? I know there's all steel grass as well that you could.
Okay, so there are several different types of grasses. I'm using beargrass today simply because I want to use it for another little arrangement I've got next. I want to show you how it's got such a lovely drape to it. The only thing I would say that's negative about beargrass is it does actually have a really sharp edge to it. So this edge here is quite barbed. So you definitely don't want to be running your hands down beargrass because you will cut. It's very sharp on the edges. You've got steel grass, which is much more rigid. Steel grass works really well if you want to put it around the inside of perhaps a fishbowl or something like that. You can wrap it around your hands, pop your hand down into the fishbowl, release the steel grass, and it will spring back against the bowl and hold its position. It snaps really quickly though, so if you want to manipulate it and make shapes, it does snap. If you want to do sort of manipulation and create weird and wacky shapes, then Flexigrass is the best one to use because it's completely pliable and malleable. It's completely cylindrical, so you can run it through your hands, you're not going to cut yourself. You can actually tie knots in it and it won't snap. So yeah, Flexigrass, as the name would suggest, is quite flexible, so that's a really useful grass to use. As I say, courses for courses again, really. It depends what arrangement you're doing and what you prefer to work with.
Going back to the fishbowl idea, gerberas in fact and Germinis are really popular to use, say, as a floating gerbera in a fishbowl with a little bit of water and then a bit of beargrass just to add.
Yeah, steel grass around the outside, your floating gerberas, perhaps a few little crystals in the bottom, and even underwater lights. The little LED underwater lights work really well in that. Again, that's something that works well for a ball. It's something that's really easy to produce, and if you've already got the fish bowls, really cost effective. The only thing is with that, if it is at the end of the evening and you want to raffle off arrangements and things like that, if it is for a ball, you've got nothing to literally give to somebody that they can then pay to add cost to your charity. So yeah, again, it depends really what you're after. But no, they work really well. Very quick, very simple, easy arrangement to achieve. I think we have actually done those on one of our previous how-to guides.
So with the beargrass that you're doing there, would there be any need to say wire them ever? I know you're just popping into the oasis.
It's not necessarily on this style of arrangement, but occasionally I have been known to do loops. So for example, if you did this, and do another one. So you've got sort of loops and tails. If you're going to create that sort of idea and you want to pop that into an arrangement, you're best then just to wire that. So just a single leg mount and then back on itself. Then if you're going to put that straight into Oasis, then I wouldn't bother about taping it. But if you're not, I'd pop some parafilm around that. So there you have your loops and tails. And you would definitely need to wire that. And then I'm just going to finish off by adding a couple of little bits here. Today.
Yeah, absolutely. Concentrated though.
Bless you, Lord. Bless you.
I'm probably the worst person to sneeze because I sneeze so many times on a record.
Let's hope it's not an allergy to flowers.
Definitely not. Unfortunately, it's cats.
Oh yeah. I don't think we haven't got a works cat, thankfully.
Thankfully.
And there you have it, a contemporary gerber arrangement. So I'm just going to move that one out of the way and just put that to one side and just quickly give you some really speedy mini gerbera ideas. So the most simple option, again excuse me, didn't get very organised today, Laura. I didn't get my leaves ready.
It's absolutely fine, Debs.
So this is a Fatsia leaf. I'm just going to wipe the dust off that. I would use leaf shine, but I'm not going to on this occasion because I want that sort of more natural feel. So I've got Fatsia there.
What colour are you going to go for?
I don't know, I've got a little bit of a choice there, haven't I? Might just go for these two, as they're quite subtle. And then my bits of Beargrass. So you can literally see how easy that is. I've just placed the two gerberas together. They have already been wired. I've got my Fatsia leaf at the base. And then I'm just going to add some little pieces of Beargrass. Now you can see why I chose the Beargrass, because it has that lovely drape to it, which you don't get with steel grass. One thing that is lovely though with steel grass is you can pierce hypericum berries on the end of it, and then they naturally give a lovely curve. Not sure the hypericum berries are impressed about it, but hey. There we go. And then if you keep doing it if you keep arranging it in your hand, then you can judge how long you need to keep them. And then just a little piece of twine. Now I'm trying to be as eco-friendly as I can here, and I haven't used any green tape on these because the tape's not biodegradable, whereas the string is. Having said that, we've got wires in it, so you'd have to remove the wires before you threw the arrangement out when you'd finished with it.
If you were to wire the gerberas or the Germinis, what would happen? Would they?
The heads would just kink slightly, but it's not ugly.
No,
so
natural.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'll just pop that into there. Just bend my leaf back slightly. And then I'm just going to trim some of this Beargrass up because I've been a little bit ambitious on that. And there you have it. How simple is that?
Indeed.
And you could even do that on a much taller version. So if you were using the large gerberas, you could do that in a tall lily vase, which could then stand in the centre of a table and you can still see underneath it. Really simple but effective. So for my next little tiny bud vase, again something really simple. I've added to the beautiful mini gerberas here, so it's Whisper and Navy. I've added this absolutely stunning rose called Mondial. This is pink Mondial. You'll actually find it in our, is it our mystery boxes this week or wedding boxes?
We actually did put it in our mystery boxes this week.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Oh, excellent.
And also, yeah, we have been putting it in our wedding boxes as well. So they are gorgeous. They've got really nice thick stems.
They are, and when that fully opens, you're going to have a really huge flower
nice
head on that.
Yeah.
So again, that would be quite useful for floating, like we did with the gerberas.
Definitely.
Once the balloon opens and it's sort of flatter, you can float it. At the moment, it wouldn't. It would just kink over because it's too bud shaped. So really, really simple style of arrangement. Actually, I'm going to put the cerise at the top, the navy at the bottom, and then everybody's favourite, the
Gypsophila.
This one looks like it might actually be Starburst. So just laying or offering the gyp up to the flowers. Again, exactly the same way as we did the other one. And then tying it. You don't have to tie it, you can literally just place it in the vase. But I'm tying it on this occasion because if you want to, you could then do those way in advance of an event, pop them into a bucket of water, and then transfer the vases and the flowers separately, then just pop them into the vases when you get there. Really simple. And just slip my rose stem up just to give added cell exposure. And away you go. Really, really simple.
Perfect. And what are we doing for the next one, Debs?
Next one. So I've got some rosemary here. Now rosemary signifies remembrance. So for either perhaps in memory of someone, for a wake, perhaps after a funeral, or even to signify remembering someone at a special event that can't sadly be with you. So just going to pop a piece of rosemary in first. And then I've got a really scrumptious colour mix there. Really sort of summer, hot, vibrant colours. So just, again, really simply. I'm not going to tie it this time. So using the rosemary as a little bit of a frame, which incidentally, anybody who's not comfortable with doing this sort of thing, rosemary or pistache or Thalaspi green bough works really well as a frame to then work your flowers in and around. So now the best way to check where you want your next one to go is turn it up the head and then cut where you want it to go in. So you've got that measurement. And then last and by no means least, I'm just going to turn this round. I want that one to go there, so I'm just going to measure where I want it to be. Cut that one down. And there you go. See how easy that was using that piece of rosemary as your frame. And there you have it. Really, really simple gerber arrangements. Slightly different styles, so you've got very much a contemporary style there, a slightly more rustic style there, and a sort of romantic classic style there.
Perfect.
So 4 simple ways of using gerberas.
Lovely. I think let's finish off, Debs.
Okay, well I hope you've enjoyed watching us today. Hope I've given you some inspiration and some tips and hints. Don't forget to share us with your friends and like us. Keep the questions coming because we'll answer them as best we can. Watch out for our YouTube videos as well. There's loads more tips and hints, how-to guides, information guides and all sorts on our YouTube channel. So keep watching, and until next week, we'll see you soon. Have a lovely weekend. Bye for now.